Hey, everybody, welcome to Perpetual Motion with Dr. Mo Anderson. Are you or someone you love dealing with a toxic relationship, divorce, or perhaps a custody battle with a narcissist? Friends, this episode is just for you. Today, we have a very powerful guest, and I mean this Lisa Johnson, co founder of Been There, Got Out, a certified high conflict divorce coach, domestic violence advocate, and author whose own case helped expand legal definitions of abuse in Connecticut after surviving emotional abuse, divorce, custody battles, and even representing herself in court. Bow down, folks, bow down. Lisa now works with people caught up in toxic relationships and high conflict legal situations. She's here to share her insights and strategies to help you wake up and protect yourself and your children. So sit back and lean in. Hi, I'm Dr. Mo Anderson, author, speaker, and podcast host. In this spot, real talk meets real growth. Each week, I sit down with experts, creatives, and change makers for conversation and sometimes make you laugh out loud. If you're ready to grow up, glow up, and go further, hit subscribe and let's move. Lisa, welcome and thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for hosting.
You know what? I share with you that I'm excited about this. It's a difficult topic, but it's needed, and not enough people are talking about it and how to deal with it and how to handle it. So I look forward to the insights you share. I mean, ideally, yeah, every couple would get together and be happy and stay together forever, ever fairy tale style. But, fairy tales end at a chapter and we just never know the rest of that story.
Yeah,
And
and the
sometimes
statistics say that half of us are not gonna have that fairy tale ending, so we have
exactly.
to.
Exactly. And we spend so much time as little girls and boys thinking about, white knights and Rapunzel and so well.
No.
Let's start with your
Mm.
personal journey, which is truly fascinating. Can you share with us your own story of abuse and divorce and what led you to make the decision to represent yourself in court rather than hiring an attorney?
So, at the very beginning, I did have an attorney for the divorce,
Hmm.
which ended up taking a year and costing $100,000. It was
A
with my
hundred
ex.
thousand. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
I always say I'm gonna be paying back those loans forever. So, I was actually with my ex for 20 years. We were married for nearly 18, and I never thought I would get a divorce. We
Hmm.
didn't have huge fights, but, at some point, 2 years before I actually got him out, I found out he had been living a double life the entire marriage, and I did what I could because I thought the most important thing was to keep the family together, and at some
Hmm.
point, it became obvious that there was just one of us who wanted that, and so I finally decided to move forward with a divorce. Got this lawyer. Within 20 minutes of the consult, he said, "Yours is gonna be one of the really bad ones," and I was just like, "That's so weird," because I thought my ex was a good person who had just done some bad things,
Right.
and my lawyer was right. Like I said, it took a year and cost $100,000. We didn't even go to final trial. We did have some trials in between, and then
Hmm.
at the end of that year, my lawyer said, "Your ex is not going to comply with this agreement. You're gonna have to go back on your own. You can't afford me anymore. He's gonna continue to decimate you financially. So I think there's some things we can do to start building your paper trail and get you ready for not if, but when you go back." And so he gave
Right.
me some tips on what I should be doing, which was kind of counterintuitive, but I did it. And then about a year and a change later, I decided to go back on my own. I talked to a couple
Yeah.
of volunteer attorneys at our courthouse because many courthouses have like volunteer attorney programs or
Right.
things for people who are pro se, which is what I became, or self represented. And the lawyers said, "You've got a fraud case. This is actually going to be really hard to win. So do it as a modification, meaning change your final agreement, and as well as something called an educational support order, because at the time our two kids were in high school and middle school.
Uh-huh.
They were going to go to college, and
Uh-huh.
so I just went in with all three things. And then for the next 7.5 years and about 100 court appearances, I pretty much represented myself with some background, limited scope attorneys, and just finally, I always say justice and karma were served. It was a long, hard
My
road, but
goodness.
it was a beautiful thing when it happened, finally, and there were lots of triumphs along the way as well, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is just incredible. The length of time, the amount of money, the fact that your kids, I guess, were out of college by the time this was
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were in the my youngest was in her final stages of college and just, like, going back over and over to be like, "You gotta pay your share," and he just dug his heels in with everything.
Wow. Wow. Okay, let's get into that a little bit. You've given us some, I mean, right there is enough to help somebody. Some terms, the pro se, I didn't even know that word, but also that there are attorneys available. We would just say pro bono, but you call them volunteer attorneys. Is there a difference?
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you
Okay.
said that because I don't want people to think that there's pro bono attorneys, like, waiting around the courthouse to do
Uh-huh.
your case for free, because there's not. So, pro bono is when somebody takes on your case and you're not charged for it. A lot of domestic violence centers have attorneys who might take on part of the case. Some bigger cities have agencies that do offer free or pro bono legal services. What I'm talking about is in a lot of courthouses, they have limited free attorney resources where in my particular courthouse, they had a couple days a week for a couple of hours you could sign up and talk to an attorney who would give you basic legal advice on your
Mhm.
case, but they wouldn't take over the case and represent you and get really,
Understood.
really involved. So it's like very top level stuff. So from the top level stuff, I was like, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is the angle I need to take. Sometimes, like in New York, where a part of my case was as well, they had something called a pro se help desk or a self-represented litigant help desk. And again, they'll have an attorney who's like, I can't tell you what to do with your case, but I can explain the law to you. I can help you fill out the forms and tell you what the proper motions are to be filed. So it's like general assistance, but again, it's not that dedicated lawyer for your case.
Okay, and for someone who is right now trying to Google pro se, it's 2 words, it's Latin, Pro and Se,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And in California, they call it pro per,
Oh, per,
like
P-E-R.
proper, but 2 words.
Gotcha, gotcha. Alright, let's back it up and talk about red flags, and we're gonna work our way through what you shared and how you managed that, to help others who are in this situation. She's a female, but we understand this can be a male or a female needing to make these moves, so fellas, if you're on, stay on because 'cause you're gonna learn something to help you and your family.
Yeah, and just know that 3 out of 4 litigants actually go pro se, male and female, because we just run out of money, and
Sure.
the legal costs are so, so expensive. But in terms of red flag indicators of high conflict divorce, this is something, like I said, my divorce attorney figured out in 20 minutes, and so later when we were doing the book, I interviewed him and said, "Eric, how did you know?" And he never organized in his head the factors, but I did in our book. And there's a few, but one of the big ones is when you are dealing with someone who has a personality disorder or an active addiction. So, not someone who's in recovery, but somebody with a
Mhm.
personality disorder or is an active addict doesn't have proper judgment and they can't even do what's in their own best interest. So, it's
Mhm.
very hard for them to make good decisions. It's often like, I need this right now, and they're not thinking about the consequences. So
Right.
that can cause the divorce or the separation custody battle to go on for a long time because this person is so angry that they just
Mhm.
make decisions without thinking about the impact that it'll have on the family. For example, how much money is spent. People will just do whatever it takes to get their punishment towards their ex without thinking about, am I blowing through our kids' college fund or something like that?
Right.
So, yeah,
I I've
so
I've
that's
I've been there. I told you I
yeah.
was married, 17 years, 2 years of a divorce, and we weren't, I wouldn't say high conflict, we were the level before that, just really angry and hurt. I think too, sometimes attorneys are not the best people. They kind of manipulate things because it's more money for them. So we had, in my case, all these crazy depositions and audits and all kind of stuff that just did not need to happen because we ended up with the standard divorce order here in Texas, but 2 years later and a lot of money. So that's the other side. What if you have this crazy narcissistic ex and your attorney is, seeing some people who he thinks has some money, that can add up to even more harm to you. So I think I wanna back up then and say when you originally had an attorney, how did you choose him?
So I actually had a friend who worked in the courthouse who had got our daughters had gone to preschool together. And I asked her because I trusted her judgment. She was an attorney, but she didn't do family law. And she referred me to a friend that she had worked with like years
Mhm,
beforehand, who
mhm.
she said had a lot of emotional intelligence. I mean, none of us knew what I was in for,
Of
but she
course.
said he's a really good guy. He's got integrity. And so when I met him, I really liked how he didn't focus on the financials, like how much money do you guys have? And like you said, like how much can we burn through? He was the
Right, a big
opposite.
retainer, all
Right,
of
no,
that,
he
yeah.
didn't. Yeah, he was great, and he asked a lot of questions because during a consult, it's not just up to the person hiring the attorney to ask questions. It's a back and forth, so that attorney should show interest and curiosity in you as a person, because think about it, this is gonna be another intimate relationship. So you need to feel like you trust this person, and they're gonna be your ally and your advocate and your mouthpiece. So you need to feel like you're on the same page. If you feel like very uncomfortable, even if they've been recommended as the best, you trust your gut and don't go with that person.
I hear you.
But in terms of what you just said, Mo, with attorneys running up the fees, I think there's a misconception that people think, well, my ex is really abusive, so I need to hire like a pit bull attorney to put them in their place. But
Mhm,
those are the kinds of attorneys that end up costing so much money because they're what's called negative advocates. They
mhm.
will tell you like this is what you deserve and this is what you should get, and they contribute to the conflict, and that costs tons of money. Conflict costs
Yes,
money. So attorneys that have extraordinary social emotional skills are much better equipped to deal with people with domestic violence issues, and just you want to find someone who's going to try to lower the conflict. So what we call a positive advocate, and I'm taking these phrases from Bill Eddy, who's a former social worker turned family lawyer turned founder of the High Conflict Institute, which focuses everything on conflict resolution.
wow, wow.
Yeah, he actually
So
wrote the foreword to our upcoming book.
congratulations. We're gonna talk about that too, and thank you for mentioning that resource as well. The red flags to make sure people got that because I kinda got us off, especially with someone who has a narcissistic traits or personality disorder like addiction. Can you repeat that again? That just the red flags, and I
Yeah,
wanna
okay, so that was just
make
one
sure
red
people
flag.
got that.
I'll give you more. But yeah, so when you're dealing with someone who has a personality disorder or an active addiction, that's a red flag because their judgment is impaired. I'm not talking about someone in recovery, but someone who is like, and that kind of leads to another red flag, and that's anger that does not subside. So in
Mm,
most separations, everybody's angry. It's always high conflict in the beginning. And then usually 4 to 6 months in, the bills pile up. You think, okay, I'm getting exhausted. Like we have to settle down and finish this and move on with our
mhm,
lives and do what's best for the kids. But people who are high conflict, the anger doesn't subside. It goes
mhm,
on for years and years and years. Doesn't matter if they find a new partner, they still will be so focused on trying to punish you. And I've heard the
right.
term like clinging hatred. It's like they can't let go because they just still want you to, they want to destroy you. So
Yeah.
that's another indicator. And then another big one is someone who feels entitled to all of the money and assets. And I often think of the quote, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too, where they won't cooperate with discovery. They think the money is their money. Even if you certainly were participating in helping raise the
Mhm.
family and doing the work too, they'll be like, nope, that's my money. And so that can make things really, really difficult to move through the process and very expensive.
Yeah, and on top of the pain of just somebody who you loved so much is now your adversary, and
Mhm.
you're constantly bumping heads, and if you have kids, you gotta see them all the doggone it is
Yeah, and you gotta
it is
parent these kids.
yes. And try not to screw them up for life, I
Mhm.
was so happy, both of my sons are married now with children, but I was just so happy. That was one of my biggest worries was, I tried to be pleasant around them and stuff, but obviously their kids are aware of the conflict and the tension, and I didn't want them to think that marriage as an institution was a bad thing, and I didn't know how to relate that on top of what they were seeing daily, so there's so much here, and I think seeing these red flags early, maybe even before you get married is where I'm going, is tantamount. Is there anything, say in your case, that you saw before you guys got married and in retrospect realize that was a red flag. Not saying you regret the marriage and the kids, but just later when we look back, we go, "Oh boy, I could have seen this coming."
Always. I mean, with everyone, they look back and say, "Oh, I didn't pay attention to the red
Mhm.
flags." But most people, I mean, domestic violence affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men.
Yeah.
And most of our clients are extremely successful, smart, creative, responsible. It's that the other side is a master manipulator, and they're
Mhm.
very good at mirroring what you want and what you value and putting on their best act to kind of ensnare you. And then it's usually later when you start realizing what happens and that mask comes off. And once they've got you, often it's on wedding night or after a child is born. So it's
Mhm.
really not easy to see. I mean, there's ways to do little tests, like generally boundary tests are great to figure it out. I didn't do it very well, as
Mhm.
many of us don't. But let's say you're on a date with someone and you're supposed to have plans either later that night or you're supposed to see them later in the week. Try just canceling and saying, I
Mhm.
can't do it or I have to leave right now, and see how they respond to when you don't do something they want. If they accept
Mm.
the no. Like if you say, you know what, I have to go, my kid is sick, I'll call you later. They're like, no, 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 I can help you. Or like, why not? And, or, why can't I see you? Oh, but I'll, if you say, I'm feeling sick, oh, let me come over and bring food. If it's like they can't just give you that space when you say no, I'm gonna, I'll call you or I'll get in touch with you. That's a red flag. Someone that's pushing
Okay.
boundaries.
Now, for me, I can see though where there might be some disappointment immediately, or is there something I can do to help? How do I differentiate that from, all right, already, I told you I want to be by myself.
Yeah, so I guess it's like repeating it and just saying like, "No, I'm fine." And how much do they keep persisting? Like you'll feel
Okay.
it inside where it's
Okay.
like, "Okay, this is annoying now. This is not
Right.
just they wanna help, it's that they're not listening to me."
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Understood. Gotcha. Gotcha. You just made me just triggered another memory of a guy I met online dating. And pretty quickly he wanted to go on a trip, but it was to LA where I have family. Normally I wouldn't do that. I need to know you a little better. You can't come to my house, me and my kids, nothing.
right,
But
right.
I have cousins in LA. I'm like, okay, I got backup if he's crazy, right? Girl, he plans the trip, the flight and everything, and then I'm like, "You know what? I need to get these details and give them to my family." I don't know him that well, so I
Mhm.
just ask, "Can I have the flight and the hotel that we're going to?" He lost his mind. I
Like
was so glad we were on the phone. He lost his mind. It was crazy,
yeah.
and he was like, "You don't need to be giving my business to people. Why are you
See,
discussing with me with
already,
people?"
like,
Yeah.
what?
And they're just gonna be checking up on me, and I
Oh,
mean,
no.
we had been out, like, 3 times, and I was like I'm on the phone, like, if you and those of you watching the video, I'm like, "What hell?" And I had dealt with one other person like this, so I knew not to just hang up,
Mhm.
that was gonna make it worse, so I, like, put the phone down and turned the volume down to it sounded like he was out of breath, and I was like, "Okay, I understand what you're saying, yeah, so I need to process, this is a lot, thank you for bringing it to my attention, girl, block, 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 you were out of your freaking
But that's
mind."
so good that it came out so quickly. But what
Yes,
you
I was
just said,
thankful.
yeah, what you just said about rushing intimacy, like rushing into a relationship to be exclusive, to move in together, to take these long trips, and assuming that that's what you want too, without even giving you the space to make
Mhm.
decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, I had girl, some learned. I was like, "Oh, no," I was just glad he lived in another city. I was like, "This dude is freaking crazy."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Great that it
Lord.
came out.
But you know what? The young me, looking back at things, the younger me would have been like, "Oh, something must have happened to him. He's just disappointed. Maybe I
Right,
didn't handle that well." I would have taken ownership of it instead of
right.
realizing this guy's trying to gaslight me.
Exactly, or been like, "What did I do wrong? Maybe I
Right.
shouldn't have asked for this. Maybe I shouldn't be getting the detail." I mean, but it's crazy. So the older us who's been through stuff like this is like, "Uh-uh."
Yep, yep, gonna have a backup, that's for sure. Well, just not really going down that road, but also whenever I go out, because you don't know people,
Yeah,
make sure somebody knows about it, who they are, and all of that, just protecting yourself from that point all the way through. Let's
yep.
talk about the financial and emotional protection. You just has such a wealth of information. When someone realizes they are up against a high conflict ex, and we've defined that, what steps do you recommend to protect themselves both financially and emotionally while navigating the court system?
So I think that with a really difficult person, the first thing you have to do is understand your rights. So know that, I mean, the tricky thing is one in two people in abusive relationships don't even know that they're in it. So as you're separating, an abusive person, there's been a power dynamic where they're kind of the authority and you kind of go along with it. And that's the nature of what's called coercive control, where like you want to avoid conflict. So everyone has their roles. A lot of our clients' exes will be saying, like, you don't need, we don't need a lawyer. Like, you already know me. You know, I'm going to take care of you and do everything right. Let's just quickly get this done
Mhm,
outside of court. And you have no idea what you're entitled to. And they will tell you what you're not entitled to. And you believe them because you've trusted them for all that time. So, one of the first things you need to do is talk to a neutral third party, like an attorney, and find out your legal rights, male and female.
mhm,
Doesn't matter. You need to figure out your rights first before you start approaching any kind of negotiation. And you also want to keep your cards close to your chest. Like once you learn your rights, don't be like, well, I know I'm going to do this and I'm leaving you. And because getting away from one of these people is one of the most dangerous times because they know that they're going to lose that power and control to a certain
mhm,
extent and they don't want to. So
yes.
I call it taking strategic oversight of your case. And that is the process of like moving along through the divorce or separation or custody battle with realizing that yours is going to be different from what we call normal separation or divorce. And your ex is going to be much more of a different type of personality to deal with. And many lawyers are not experienced with people like that. They're trained in logic and they think, okay, both parties are angry, but everyone's going to come to the table and they're going to do what's fair and they're going to do what's best for the kids. That is
Mhm,
not the values that your ex has. They're going to do what's best for them.
for
So
right.
approaching mediation very, very differently and also realizing that even though let's say you have a lawyer, that you know your ex better than anyone. And the only people that have to live with the consequences of this situation are you and your kids. So you really need to put on your big girl or big boy panties and be like, I need to understand what's going on. I'm not
Right.
going to repeat that same toxic cycle of like placing trust and authority in somebody. And now I come out of that relationship. I give someone a ton of money as a retainer and say, you're going to save my life, lawyer. So you do
Right.
it. And I don't know what's going on. You need to know what motions are being filed. You need to make sure you have informed consent. Like when you're sending proposals, some people's lawyers are sending things out on their behalf. And then they say, I never wanted this. You need to stay on top of things. You need to
Is that
proofread things.
legal?
That the lawyers, their voiceover lawyers, like, well, based on what you said, I thought you wanted
Mm,
this. So you really need to be more of a collaborative partner with your lawyer. I'm not saying don't listen to legal advice, but you have to realize something we call the client as consumer. And I also take this idea from a lawyer in Canada named David Morneau, who wrote the
mhm,
foreword to our first book. And he talks about how many of us spend more time and energy researching appliances than we do with helping find professionals to help us get out of our long-term marriages and figure out what the law is going to be for our lives moving forward. And I'm talking about like an agreement or a parenting plan. So it's so important to make sure that you demand quality from the people that you're working with, whether it's a lawyer, financial professional,
mhm.
real estate, coaches, whatever. Like you're in charge, you're paying the bills. Make sure you're getting what you pay for. Like get your
Okay.
money's worth. So
Makes sense.
insist on it. But many people in these situations, because of the nature of the relationship they've been in, they feel like, well, I have to listen to everything my lawyer says. And I'm not allowed to question. You
Mhm.
need to question. You can do it very politely by saying, please, can you help me understand whatever it is? I need to understand why. You shouldn't be, it's a terrifying experience anyway, but to live in confusion and being scared to ask your lawyer questions is
Mhm.
not healthy. So think of it as this is your opportunity to change the dynamics of your relationships with your lawyer. Your lawyer should be
Right.
a safe person. You should be able to ask questions. This is how you start empowering yourself.
Okay. I want to circle back to what you said about the ex or soon to be ex trying to coach you, what the divorce should be like what you're entitled
Right.
to. It is
Or what
just
you're not entitled to.
what you're not entitled to, and I have seen it so many times with guys and women who I thought would be in these difficult circumstances very fair and very honest, that they just turn into somebody else. It's really I don't know what divorce does to us, but it can totally change a person, so I think that's really great advice, and they may even be telling the truth, but to get an outside objective opinion on this information and not just fly down to some island and sign whatever paper they put
Mm.
in front of you, not really knowing what you're getting into. Because 'cause I've just seen some folks devastated, thinking that they were getting a fair deal, and they were not at all, especially there were a lot of hidden assets too,
Mhm.
so
Yep, all the time.
yeah, yeah. On the attorney, what are some key questions people should ask them? I think we've talked about the feeling and feeling
Mhm.
comfortable, feeling like you can trust them. I want that with my healthcare provider, with my, financial planner. Then, of course, I want it also with an attorney for this new relationship. Do you, I don't know, you may have some on your website, but what are some good questions to ask them?
Yeah, well, the first one is definitely billing because many of us use our lawyers as therapists, and then we get these $8,000 a month bills. It's like, what happened? So we always say, like, on average, it costs about $95 to ask your lawyer a question.
Mm,
So knowing that there's other resources who can answer those questions, not just to always go to your attorney. But in terms of meeting for the first time, um, I think one of the important questions to ask is how that lawyer stays on top of the new laws. Because lawyers are really, really busy. And sometimes things like laws change all the time, like
yeah.
some of these coercive control laws that could actually help your case. And if a lawyer is not taking the time to do their CLEs, which stands for continuing legal education, they might not be aware of how things have changed. And I know one lawyer I was working with at some point who was helping me. I said, "Did you know that, like, you're telling me to do this, but did you know the law has," and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know. Thanks for sharing it with me." I'm thinking, "You're my law, like, you're supposed to know this. It's not supposed to be on me to share laws with you." But I think the most important question to really ask, especially at the end of a consult, is how would you handle a case like mine? Because that's twofold. First of
Mhm.
all, it gives you a chance to see if the lawyer has actually paid attention to what you're saying. And secondly, do they have a
Yes.
strategy to deal with cases like yours? People
Uh-huh,
sometimes
uh-huh.
say, ask a lawyer if they have experience with narcissism. They're going to all say yes. Like that's a big marketing thing. Is, oh, and actually, a red flag statement is we handle all divorces because the high conflict cases are only about 10% and they are completely different from normal divorce. These are the cases that fatigue lawyers, that they push people to settle because they're just like, I can't deal with it anymore. My old lawyer, who was lovely, was like, don't send me any of your clients, Lisa. Like, those are the ones that keep me up at night. I don't want to deal with it.
Mm,
So so you need to have a lawyer, again, with those, like, social emotional skills, is very transparent about billing. Another good question is, how often will we communicate or how will we communicate?
mhm.
Our cases, our clients are very, very needy, and they tend to be like when a lawyer doesn't answer, they'll feel almost like they did in the relationship where they feel like they're getting the silent treatment.
Or
So if
getting
ahead of time
abandoned,
you say
yeah.
to a lawyer, "Are we gonna be should I email you? Do we check in
Mhm.
every couple of weeks? Is it as needed?" Like, just having that kind of comfort that they're not just being
Right.
ignored matters.
What about these large firms where you start out talking to the guy who's on the billboard or whatever, and then the next thing you know, they pushed you off on junior people, paralegals, or whatever? That would be something they would have answered then if you asked this question, that most of the communication is emailed through so and so, or
So
is that right?
understanding the process, like if you're paying a certain amount for a
Mhm.
lawyer that you wanted and then they change it, you say that's I don't want that, or we have to negotiate a different deal. I know we worked with actually someone in Texas, not on family law stuff, and at one point for the presentation of the case there was a real junior lawyer and then there was a lawyer we were talking to and the main lawyer said with the junior lawyer there, I don't know if you're comfortable, but do you want him to present the case because it would be a lot cheaper and he's very competent. And so I felt like he informed us and we were able to give consent, like understanding that. And we ended up
Mhm.
using the junior attorney who did an amazing job, got us like the
Okay.
best ever. So, but again, that was really about, I think, respect that a lawyer has for the client to say,
Mhm,
this is, are you okay with this decision? Not just like, oh, I'm leaving, I'm handing you to this person.
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Communication.
and just really just get back to me. That's the worst for
Right.
me. You just leave me hanging. I don't know if you got it, and then Imma send another email. I wait a couple of days now. It's not an hour later. A couple of days, and I'm like, "Hey, moving this back up in your inbox." Just say received. I'll get back with you, something,
Yeah.
you know. But do you value me as much as I value you? We're all busy. I'm sick of people like, "I'm so busy." Well, yeah, join the
Right.
club. Everybody's busy, but you committed to this, and you should communicate, you know?
That's respect. Like communication again is respect.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've talked about the, abuse a bit during the relationship and when, deciding to get divorced, but I wanna talk about post-separation abuse because many only see it or believe it's only there in the relationship phase. But what are some signs of post-separation abuse, and how can someone recognize that pattern?
Okay, so of course, I had no idea that I was going to be dealing with post separation legal abuse,
Yeah.
except when my lawyer said, your ex isn't going to comply with the agreement. So
Mhm,
there's two main types of post separation legal abuse. One is what's called frivolous litigation or vexatious litigation. And that's when a person uses the legal system to basically terrorize you, where they'll file all kinds of motions where usually that they're going to take the kids away, that you're an unfit parent, that they're going to reduce the amount of support they're paying or no money, whatever it is. And so you live in this constant state of fear and dread of like, oh my gosh, what's happening next? And you have to keep giving up your time and your life because you're always like spending money on lawyers to respond to these motions, taking time
mhm,
off work, taking time away from your parenting. Again, like living with this sense of overwhelm all the time.
right.
So it's awful. And other words for legal abuse, which I love, are paper abuse because of all the paper wasted and stalking through the courts because that's what it basically is. The other type of legal abuse is what I went through, and that's where someone does not comply with the agreement or order, then the burden is on me to keep taking them back to court to get
Mm,
enforcement. So it's the same
mhm,
thing. I have to take time and money out of my life. I luckily represented myself for all that time, and I know
right.
I saved well over $1 million by doing it myself. But again, that all of that energy and the frustration and having to stop things. Like I had been a high school English teacher and I started looking for work again. And as I was doing the job searching, it was just like every single time something would start happening, I'd be like, oh, actually, I can't do it because I have a court date. And it wasn't just the court date itself, it was all of the preparation. It takes weeks to prepare. That's why trial costs are so expensive for attorneys. It's preparation.
Mhm.
So, yeah, legal abuse is awful and it does not end fast for most people.
Wow. Quickly, I know we're short on time here. I don't wanna leave the part out about protecting our children from being weaponized because whether we want them to be or not, they are right in the center or close observation of all of this, hearing different things from both parents. It's just tragic. Do you have some strategies that you'd recommend for preventing that or protecting children when an ex is trying to use them to hurt you?
Well, unfortunately, we can't prevent it because
Okay.
people like this see the world generally very black and white. They have black and white thinking. So, just like they do with other people, it's sort of this you're with me or you're against me. So, with
Mhm, mhm,
children who have parents like that, they often find themselves in something called loyalty conflicts, where the parent will be like, if you love me, you
mhm.
need to reject your other parent or discard their
Right.
other parent, just like I did. So, kids
Mhm.
feel really, really so this is a huge topic. It's actually a topic of our upcoming book and course, but we just plan for it. But one way to sort of protect yourself preemptively is
Mhm.
to make sure you have strong bonds with your kids from the time that they're very young. You make memories with them, you focus your attention on them, you let them
Mhm.
lead you in activities that they enjoy. Having those positive memories make it less likely for when that terror campaign starts with them
Right.
and they may align with an abusive parent for a while, and again, this is such a huge topic, but
Right,
in
right.
terms of legally, I think the number one thing is something we call strategic communication, and it's a way where you're not just documenting your ex's bad behavior, but you're confronting them in writing, where you're writing to them but always for an invisible audience and understanding something called the alienation factors of what the courts care about. Because one thing we always hear about is something called best interest factors. Like people always say, let's do what's in the kid's best interest. But that's actually a set of different conditions. And one of the most important ones is that each parent should be supporting the child's relationship with the other parent. Or is one parent undermining that relationship? And those alienation factors basically go under what does undermining look like? So when
Right.
that's happening and you know it, you want to not just, again, write it down in your journal, but you want to start confronting your ex in writing to start putting it on the record for when you do go back to court and you're asking for whatever it is you need, whether it's therapy or something else.
Got it, got it, and we can't get into the, language right now. I gotta have you back, and I wanna hear more about the children and more there's got to be a part 2
I
to this.
love this
But
topic. Yeah, it's a
I do
huge
too.
topic.
In your book, Been There, Got Out, Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Mouthful.
That's the
Very good.
title, y'all. In there, do you address that more in depth, that topic about the children and dealing with them and helping them through this process?
So that was
Or just
actually
the next book?
it's the next book. We
Okay.
touched on it a little tiny bit, but the next one is completely about that. It's called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, and it's how to deal
Oh,
with it legally and especially outside of court from beginning to end to post. If your kids have been completely turned against you, if you start seeing it, what are the signs of like when to take it legal and all about that. And I interviewed hundreds of experts. There's at least 52 plus in there. There's
wow.
interviews with I have a friend whose daughters were turned against her for 8 years, and then they came back as adults. They let
Mhm,
me interview them individually about what it was like from the child's perspective who's dealing with something like this. So,
mhm.
yeah, it's a big topic that affects 20 to 2 million divorced parents in America and Canada alone, if you could believe
Oh,
that.
that's huge. Those are huge numbers. Wow.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your story and expertise with us today. Before we go, tell everyone how to find you online, about your coaching, your services. And
Okay.
I know you're very active on social media. Y'all gotta follow her on TikTok. Oh my God, her reels are fire on these topics, but some kind of way very engaging and interesting. I went down a rabbit hole on your
Oh
TikTok and
my god,
IG.
TikTok is, like, just a fraction. Instagram's my home base, like, I have
Okay.
way more on Instagram, but good that you found us on TikTok. So we're everywhere.
Yes, you
Our
are.
handle is been there, got out with, sometimes on some sites, it's got the little underscores between, but any if you just Google "been there, got out," our first book is "been there, got out." The second book is also "been there, got out" with the "When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You." We have weekly legal abuse support group. We combine our men and women together. We have
Mm,
strategy sessions.
nice.
We work with men and women all over the world. We do everything virtually. We have a whole series of courses called From Fear to Fierce in Family Court. We have a course on strategic communication, what I just talked about. It's called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind, because that's very triggering for people, the communication. But loads of
Yeah.
stuff. Just go to our site, Been There, Got Out, and it's just Chris and I, and we always answer.
Yes. Yes, you do. She's very, very great with communication, folks. Lisa, thank you again for sharing these tips and strategies with us today. Divorce is never easy, and when it's high conflict, it can feel overwhelming. But your insights remind us that with the right tools, support, and mindset, it is possible to navigate the process and come out stronger.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. To our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Lisa's work, visit beentheregotout.com. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Perpetual Motion with Dr. Mo Anderson. Remember my tagline, change your words, change your world. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mo. Stay encouraged, stay empowered, and keep moving forward. Thank you.